Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Miss Julie, and I will be teaching you tonight on 10 common misconceptions for the Ivymind Common App Essay Workshop. So again, my name is Miss Julie. I have worked with Ivymind for many, many years. I've worked on essays. I've done some teaching. I have my master's degree in literacy. I'm a literacy specialist as well. So I've done a lot with a Common App essay over the years. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to start with what is the Common App essay. I was looking through some of the names of you and I recognize some of you. I've even read some of your Common App essays already. So I know that many of you have already been hard at work. We're going to talk about the misconceptions, 10 different misconceptions about the Common App essay. We'll go through some examples of real life students who have been accepted to schools, right? And what works and what doesn't work in these essays as well. We'll talk about some other misconceptions as well as those 10, some smaller ones. And at the end, we'll even do some brainstorming together if we have time, along with some advice from Ivymind on your Common App essays along the way. So what is the Common App essay? Again, many of you have probably already started this, and if you haven't, you will soon, right? So the Common App essay is your primary writing sample through the Common Application system. It's a college application portal accepted by many, many schools. All prospective students accepting, or schools, accepting the Common App essay will read the essay, right? To understand your character, your background, and your value as a potential student. Since many, many colleges read this essay, you want to avoid mentioning any college names. So there shouldn't be any specific schools named in any of your Common App essay, right? You shouldn't name Harvard or Yale or Princeton, right? You shouldn't be talking about a specific school. This essay is going to talk about you, right? Personally. Save those tailored answers to specific schools for all of your supplementary essays, which are essays that are tailored to specific schools, right? Specific schools ask specific questions. So what are the 2024-25 Common App essay prompts? They have not changed, right? As of now, they have not changed. They said our decision to keep these prompts unchanged is supported by research, right? So they do their research. The 7 topics are all staying the same for this year. And that came directly from the Common App website. We're going to start today with misconception number 1. And this is one I know as an editor, I hear often. I need to read the Common App essay prompts and answer one of the 7 prompts directly. We recently did an essay camp, and this question got asked many times. Which one do I pick, right? I have to pick a prompt, and then I have to write an essay. And I'm here to tell you that is not true, right? That is not true. Why? Because every story you want to tell about yourself will always satisfy prompt number 7, right? Which reads, share an essay on any topic of your choice. So what I don't want you to do is think, I need to read through these essay prompts and I need to pick something to go specifically with that prompt, right? We don't want you to think that way. Instead, we want you to think about yourself, right? And what story is important to you. Then, after you write that story, you can always go back and see if it fits in any of the prompts. And if it doesn't, that's okay, because it will fit in to prompt number 7, right? Because again, share an essay on any topic of your choice. That could be any topic, right? So it would fit into that prompt if it did not fit into one of the other 6. It can be one you've already written, one that responds to a different prompt, or one of your own design, right? And we prefer one of your own design, writing something new for this Common App essay, something that shares something new about you. So when tackling the Common App personal statement, it's crucial to recognize that the prompts themselves hold minimal significance. So again, this is important. Don't worry about the prompts, right? The heart of the matter lies in crafting the personal statement that vividly portrays your personality, growth, and maturity through a compelling narrative. That's the most important piece, right? The prompts serve as a framework rather than a strict guide. So again, don't look at those prompts and panic and think, I don't have a story that goes with the prompts, right? That's okay. You can always choose a story, a personal narrative that is compelling to you, right? Something that where you're going to show your real personality, you're going to show growth, that you have changed, right? Growth, personal growth from beginning to end of your essay, and maturity as well. Something where they're going to really see your personality shine through. That is way more important than picking a specific prompt and writing what you think you have to write, right? Or trying to fit a story into a specific prompt as well. Your best approach is often to develop your topic and personal statement arc first, right? Allowing the essay to naturally align with the most fitting prompt. At this point, you may have worked with your essay teacher or your counselor and brainstormed, right, for your Common App essay. Brainstorming is going to be an important step of where you really try to think of your story, your unique story, right? So again, when you're going through that brainstorming process with your editor or your counselor, you will naturally come up with a story that fits you, right? So again, don't worry too much about fitting those prompts. Just worry about your own personal, unique story. Admissions officers focus more on your reflective writing abilities and the narrative of your personal development rather than the specific prompt, right? So ultimately, your goal is to communicate a genuine story, right? And as long as that objective is met, any prompt is fair game, right? You have to have a genuine story about you, right? So again, the most important piece of this is telling your unique, genuine story and not worrying about trying to fit your story into a specific prompt. Okay. So remember, whatever essay you want to write about yourself will always satisfy the requirements of Common App prompt number 7. Okay. It always fits Common App prompt number 7. It's important for you to figure out what you want to tell admissions officers. What do you want them to know about you to determine what story will leverage your chances, right? Than to try guessing the right or the best answer. We often have students say, well, this is what I think they want to hear, right? That's why I wrote this. This is what I think they might want to hear. It's much more important to write your unique story and not worry about what you think they want to hear, right? It comes across much more personal and much more unique. And even the tone of the essay comes across much more comfortable and personal if you're writing a true, genuine, unique story about yourself instead of making things up, right? Any questions about misconceptions number 1? Anything about worrying about the prompts? So again, the main part of that is do not worry about the essay prompts, right? Tell your story. Your story will naturally fit into one of those prompts. And if it doesn't, it will fit into number 7, right? Because number 7 is your unique story. Pick your own topic. Number 2, misconception number 2 is I need to pick a unique topic. This one kind of goes with number 1 as well. But again, we have many students as we go through the brainstorming process say, I don't have a unique story. I don't have anything exciting that I did. I can't think of anything that to tell about myself that would be unique. right? And I'm here to tell you that there is no such thing as a unique topic, but there are unique ways of representing that topic. Sports stories have been written many times, and we'll actually talk about sports in a little bit. Stories about musicians, stories about overcoming a challenge, right? In fact, many of your stories will fit into prompts. So obviously, they may be like someone else's story. But the way you have to look at it is through a different lens, right? There's no topic that hasn't been written before, but that doesn't mean that you can't make your story unique, right? Exciting, engaging, compelling ways of executing the most mundane topic, right? If it's important to you, it will be important to others as well. So, how do you do that, right? We'll talk about how you do that. Even though we're talking about misconceptions, you really can write about anything: your family, the pleasure you take in an activity, surfing, an afternoon walk, right? You really can tell a story about anything that is important to you as long as it is written well, right? And that's going to be the important part, as long as it is well written and told through a unique lens, right? So it shouldn't be cliche. And we'll talk a little bit more about cliches in a little bit as well. Writing about your family. This is misconception number 3. Discussions of your family, usually parents or grandparents. And already this year, I have read quite a few essays that mention grandpa or grandma. So that is common, right? And sometimes they're overrepresented, and that can be detrimental to your application. Why? Why would it be detrimental to talk about your family in your Common App essay? Can anyone tell me? Why would that be a bad thing to talk about your family, to write an essay about your grandfather, or to write an essay about your sister? Anyone? Elena, go ahead.
I think it's because writing about your family is not necessarily about yourself. You can put that family element in the essay to reflect your childhood, but it's not about them. Automatically, your essay is about yourself and the bigger
Yes,
world you interact with.
excellent. That's the perfect answer. Yes, ultimately, this Common App essay is about you, and you are the primary focus. Now, I like how Elena said there's nothing wrong with adding your family in: a sister, a brother, your immediate family, a grandma, a grandpa. They might be a great influence to you, and you might have an awesome story to tell, right, about that grandfather or grandmother. But when you take a step back and read the essay should be about you, right? And that's where the issue about writing family comes into play. When we read the essay, is the essay about grandma or grandpa, or is it about the student, right? So that there's a fine line there. Yes, the story has to revolve around you. Can you add elements of your family into it as a secondary piece? Yes, but the main focus of your essay must be on you, right? This is called a personal statement for a reason. Your family can act as a secondary character. That's very much what Elena just said, right? Your family can provide a setting. Are you at the dinner table? Are you in the car? Are you doing an activity? Are you keeping the story in one place? Helps familiarize the reader with your setting, right? So again, it's not that your family members can't be in a story. The main focus has to be on you. So how do you write about your family, right? First of all, you don't start out with writing an essay about your family in mind as your goal. You end up there organically. So you don't say, okay, I'm going to write, my grandma is my biggest mentor, my biggest person that I really look up to, right? I'm going to write an essay about my grandmother. We don't start there, right? You don't start with writing an essay about another person, right? You want to identify the specific personality trait that you aim to convey in yourself. right? And yourself in your essay is crucial. And this serves as a compass for your writing journey. So consider making a list. This is an excellent idea. Make a list, consulting with your friends, and pinpointing 3 characteristics that truly define you. Think of 3 adjectives, right? 3 describing words that truly define you, and see if you can come up with that in your essay. If someone else who doesn't know you reads your essay, would they be able to say, those are the 3 traits that I can see in this person, in this student? Are they trying to portray that they're compassionate? Are they trying to portray that they have a heart of service, a heart of help for helping others, right? What are those 3 things that you want to portray to admissions officers? So I'm not going to have you do this right now, but this is something to keep in mind and for you to do. And you may have already done with your counselor or editor, but take a minute and think about what 3 characteristics truly define you. This is also actually a supplementary essay question for some of the schools. They will ask you to write down 3 or 5 words that describe yourself. So this activity is helpful for supplemental essays as well. From there, you can brainstorm stories that exemplify those traits. So if you picked the word compassionate, what makes you compassionate, right? Think of stories. Think of anything that you have done in your life that you can, that will portray you as compassionate, right? So write those stories down, even if it's just jotting it down a couple of sentences or typing it out. It will help you see the overall picture of what your overall focus of what you want admissions officers to see in you. If the truest and most genuine story is related to your family, so say you wrote this out and you're brainstorming ideas and your family keeps coming up, right? Maybe it's that grandpa who really was a compassionate person and you have a story about that and he taught you how to be a compassionate person, right? Then choose that one, but you should only do so if you can tell a cohesive story about yourself. Remember, you're the focus, and the secondary characters don't overshadow you. So most of the essay shouldn't be about grandpa's story and how compassionate grandpa was, right? You might tell a little bit about him and why he was meaningful to you. The majority of the story should be about you. You might also consider telling vignettes, which are smaller stories. That can be harder to do as well, but keep that in mind. That's also a possibility. So you want to approach your essay writing with the same structure as any other piece, right? Keep the story in the spotlight, keep you in the spotlight. Use secondary characters, which could be family members, grandparents, close friends, right? To illustrate your personality trait, and then ensure that your narrative has a well-defined beginning, middle, and end. Ultimately, it's still a story, right? Even though it's a true, genuine story about you. So keep you in the focus, you in the spotlight, and those other characters in your story, though important to you, keep them as secondary characters as well. The next common misconception is I kind of put these all together, is music, genre, and sports. I see in the chat box someone wrote they want to know about you. Yes, this is a personal essay, right? So you are the focus. They want to know something unique about you. Keep that in mind for the Common App essay in general. You have an application, you have a resume, right? You have an activities list that they will be seeing. Your Common App essay should tell a different story about you, right? This is the only personal piece of your application, right? That all these schools will see. So you really want to tell a personal, unique story about yourself, something that they can't see from your resume, something that they won't be able to tell from your activities list, right? Something new and unique and interesting about yourself. Let's start with music. We all love music and drama. I play the piano. My children play the cello, the bass, the clarinet, the drums. I have lots of musicians in my family. Music is important, right? It's important to a lot of people. It's a big influence. The most important thing to keep in mind is that your Common App essay needs to be about you. That's going to be the focus on each one of these, right? Not just music or drama, right? And we get that music might be a big part of your life, but there are two common traps. I'm going to go over these that we don't want you to fall into when it comes to music and drama. Trap number one, right? Writing a Common App essay about an extracurricular activity. Remember, I just talked about that activity list that you already have done that they will look at. We don't want to try to fit people into boxes, right? And we love uncovering layers of depth that speak to a diverse list of interests, passions, and qualities. However, if you've been playing jazz music since the 6th grade, it's likely, right, the jazz musician will already be on your Common App activity list, right? That will already be on there. Many people like to write about music or drama through a common lens. I told you I've already read quite a few Common App essays this year about music. Music or drama helped me come out of my shell and allowed me to express myself. If that's your story, you don't want to write about that for your Common App essay, right? You don't want to write about how music or a play, drama of some sort helped you come out of your shell, helped you find your confidence and allowed you to express yourself more. That essay is written many, many times and would not be very unique. While this may be true, colleges have read these essays for years, right? And your essay might be placed into a music pile, and that's not what you want. So suppose you've been making music or studying music outside of school, and it's on your resume. In that case, we suggest that you use your Common App essay as an opportunity to showcase other unique qualities. Remember, your Common App essay should say something new about you, right? And again, it's not that you can't write about music, but you would have to do it from a very unique lens. I think about a student we had a few years ago who wrote about music, and she wrote a beautiful essay. Now, her essay was not about how music helped her come out of her shell or allowed her to express herself. Her thing with music was that she liked to be unique in the music that she made, right? So she was a violinist and had a very strict teacher who taught her a certain style, and she had to stick with the style. And instead of sticking with that style, she kind of went outside of that style and ended up playing in front of Carnegie Hall, a very unique piece that was not the norm, right? That is a unique lens. And she wrote about music, and it was a beautiful essay. So it's not that music can't be done or drama can't be done, but if you're telling a story about music or drama, it should be through a unique lens, not that it has helped you gain confidence. Trap number 2 is writing a Common App essay that's a love letter to your favorite musician or actor, right? Many of us have musicians that we follow. I know in America right now, Taylor Swift is very popular. That's why I used her as an example. And musicians can have a great influence on us, right? As well. So can actors, famous actors as well, if you're into drama. Whenever you write an essay about someone else, your grandmother, your favorite teacher, your best friend, Taylor Swift, right? By definition, your Common App essay is no longer about you, right? Remember we talked about those secondary characters? And that's problematic because colleges can't tell what kind of person you are based on your favorite musician. Remember, you have to look at these essays through the lens of an admission officer. What am I learning about you, right? What am I learning about the person? So no matter how deep your love for Taylor Swift is, right, it's best to skip this approach, right? Try not to use a famous musician or an actress or actor um, as part of your essay. It's done often. So how can you write a Common App essay about music or drama, right? I said, even though it is common and it is done through the lens of it has helped me gain confidence in myself or help me break out of my shyness, right? It still can be done, but you have to reframe the question here. Instead of asking, how can I incorporate music or drama into my essay? Instead, ask yourself, how can I incorporate music into my Common App essay, right? Writing about music or drama can be a helpful lens if it shows how you see the world, right? Remember I told you about the girl who was a violinist who um, changed the style of the music, did something very unique for a violinist. She also added in that essay different ways in which she pushed the button, pushed challenges, right? In which she kind of broke through and did more or more than was expected of her. And that was a great connection, right? It wasn't just about music and how she kind of broke through that lens. She added other areas of her life. So you want to show how you see the world and how you think, but it has to be done correctly. For example, this is a good example. A student who loved learning about other countries and cultures was sitting in French class one day and trying to figure out how he could learn about France without his textbook. He decided to start listening to French music to brush up on his pronunciation skills and knowledge of the country. He continued along this path, listening to playlists from almost every country in Europe. Again, this is a very interesting lens, right? A different way to look at music. This is a great example of how an essay that incorporates music isn't exclusively about music. Okay, so wasn't exclusively about music. This essay was more about the fact that he kind of followed this path of listening to music from other country and learning about each country through that process, and then what he learned about himself through that process as well. So writing about music or drama connects to so many aspects of the human experience, right? And it's a powerful subject for a college essay if you harness and focus it in the correct way, right? So again, that unique lens. You are the focus, not the music or drama. And you can incorporate music or drama into your essay if it is a unique way of doing it, a unique story. Next, we'll talk about sports. And again, this essay season, I have already read many essays about sports, and not all cliche. Like I said, it's not that you can't write about sports, right? I know sports are very important to you. In fact, Miss Julie, many years ago when I was applying to college, wrote my essay about a sport. I was a swimmer way back when. So we hear this often, I can't write about sports. That's what everybody does, right? That's not true. Not everyone writes about sports, but we're going to show you some different ways to look at this. So the notion that all students who play sports write college essays about their athletic pursuits or journeys is not true, right? Athletes are not just athletes. They're complex humans with lots of different talents and other aspects of their life as well. So they're not just writing about sports. Sports teach valuable skills like leadership, teamwork, and discipline, right? And they foster bonds of friendship that often last for decades. A working knowledge of sports can even be a lifelong conversation starter among strangers, right? So sports are important to many, many people. But instead of writing just about your sport, so a prime example is we won the championship game and it changed my life, right? That is an essay that is written very commonly. That's what we're trying to avoid, is writing an essay that is very common, right? We won the basketball championship and I thought we were going to lose, but we won, right? That's what we don't want to write about. So we want to shift the lens. Students do not have to shy away from detailing these experiences and what they learn from them. They just have to shift the lens, add another layer or approach to these topics from creative perspectives to make them both original and reflective of a greater range of interests and talents. So, for example, maybe your experience diving for a ball as a volleyball player allowed you to take a risk in applying for the job of your dreams. Perhaps the qualities needed to be a good basketball player were also skills that you needed to command a boardroom, right? Students might want to steer away from major tropes, cliches, like getting injured. That's another common one. Basketball or football was my whole life, and I got injured. My knee, right, got injured, and now things changed, and now I have this challenge that I can't play anymore. That's also a very cliche, very overdone sports essay. You want to avoid the I got injured or the big game or I scored the winning goal. That's another big one as well. Admissions officers don't want to hear about how you scored the winning goal, right? If those stories were treated with sincerity and innovative perspective, could they make an effective essay? Yes. But the problem is, again, you don't want your essay to be like, okay, this is in the sports pile, right? She won the big game or he won the big game. Your essay should stand out and make you unique. For sports essays, when I read them, this is the main question I ask myself as an editor, right? As an editor reading sports essays, the main thing I ask myself is, for example, if it was a basketball essay, but it could be swimming, football, hockey, any sport, could any other player have written your essay? So think about that for a second. Could any other player have written this essay? If any other lacrosse player put her name on your application, would the details still be mostly accurate, right? Is it telling something unique about you? Or could any lacrosse player have written that essay? Or any basketball player have written that essay? What made it uniquely about you, right? Again, keep you in the focus. So yes, you can write a sports essay, but it has to be a sports essay unlike any other sports essay, which can be hard to do, but yes, it can be done, right? So again, ask yourself after you wrote the essay, could any swimmer have written this essay, right? If the answer is yes, then the essay needs to change, right? You can still possibly write that topic, but maybe through a different lens or a different angle. I will have time for questions at the end as well, but feel free to write in the chat box as we go. I will look at it periodically as well. Our common misconception number 5 is politics. This one is difficult. I know in the United States right now, there's an election coming up, but even just normal elections, not just the presidential election, politics can be tricky. First thing that is most important is you have no idea who is reading your application. You don't know their name. You don't know how old they are. You don't know if they're male or female, right? You don't know who's reading your application. So you cannot possibly know that person's political beliefs. So again, we usually tell students if politics are important to you, you really have to tread carefully here because you don't know what admissions officer will be reading your essay and you don't know what they believe in. So what if you are very adamant about being a liberal and the person reading your essay is a conservative, right? Or vice versa. You have to tread carefully around politics because institutions can have their own cultures too that align with specific political ideologies. So for example, liberal arts colleges are typically associated with progressive and left-leaning values, while certain religious schools or universities lean more towards conservative beliefs. So again, remember, the Common App essay is one essay that you write that many, many schools will see. So if you're writing about your political beliefs, you don't know who will be reading your essay and what their personal beliefs are. And no, their personal beliefs shouldn't affect their reading of your essay, but it could, right? So that being said, if politics is an essential part of who you are, you can learn how to write about politics in an effective but non-offensive way as well. So there are two main places where politics will come up. Your essays. Essays are a place where you could discuss politics because they allow you to expand on your passions, right? Maybe your passion is politics. You could use your involvement with politics in a variety of essays, including your personal statement. Community involvement topics sometimes involve politics as well, and your extracurricular topics. Your activity section is a valuable opportunity to showcase your leadership and commitment through your involvement in political extracurriculars. So this is really the place we recommend that you write out anything you've done with politics, right, would be in your activities section. If you were the president of the Young Democrats Republicans Club at your school, or you were the social media manager for a state representative, right, your activities list would be where you should include those activities with pride. How not to talk about politics in your application, right? So stating your beliefs without providing context to your life. Your political beliefs didn't just appear out of nowhere, right? They were shaped, they were evolved over years of life experience. Colleges care more about the life experiences that helped shape you and led you to hold your views than the views are themselves. So think about that again. Colleges care more about your life experiences. What has shaped you into the person you are today? Think about that. Provide perspective on the experiences that shaped your opinion will make it easier for people with different beliefs to emphasize and appreciate where you are coming from, okay? So describing a politician's beliefs in detail, no, right? No one needs to hear about a politician's views on immigration or the bills they've sponsored or passed. Remember, the focus of your essay is on you, right? Not a politician. So instead, focus on your unique experiences, such as the memos that you wrote, attending town hall meetings, answering constituent questions. This emphasis on your personal experiences can make you feel that your application is truly about you and your unique journey. So again, focus is on you, not others. Never, ever, don't outwardly criticize or demonize opposing political beliefs. No matter how strongly you feel about it, your Common App essay is not the place to do this. It goes back to the saying from kindergarten, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it, right? And definitely not in your Common App essay. You also don't want to lie, right? Sometimes students may be tempted to look at a school and say, okay, well, this is a religious school, so I think they might have more conservative views, so I'm going to gear my essay towards more conservative. You don't want to do that either, right? You might be tempted to say your views align with the overall vibe of the school, and if they don't, it shows, right? Even when a school has a reputation for leaning towards one political ideology over the other, admissions officers want to create a class of diverse perspectives. So you don't want to write your essay based on what you think the school wants you to hear. Again, the essay should be about you. So is there a way to effectively talk about politics? If you are going to bring up politics at all, you want to focus on your involvement in politics rather than your beliefs. So for example, when describing political extracurriculars in the activities section or in your essays, the focus should be on your involvement. What were your responsibilities, achievements, the lessons you learned, right? When writing about your work with Young Democrats, say you organized annual voter registration drives where over 150 students registered for the upcoming election, rather than how you were a part of a club that promoted the democratic perspectives on topics like abortion, immigration, and the economy. Instead of focusing on that politics, that political part, again, focus on your involvement, your achievement, right? The lessons that you learned, even when doing your activities section as well. Present your political extracurriculars as a platform for skill development, just like any other activity. So use your involvement in politics to demonstrate your character and achievements, but also emphasize the skills and qualities you've developed. So again, think about you. What skills did I learn? What responsibilities did I have? What qualities did I develop? And what did I learn from this experience? And focus on that instead of your personal political views. Having an open mind and be willing to hear new perspectives is not only an invaluable skill for future politicians, but for any productive citizen, right? You want to demonstrate in your application that although you might hold certain beliefs, you are always committed to learning and engaging in productive debate to expand your perspective. So again, always avoid racism, sexism, and bigotism of any kind, right? That's also something you should avoid in your essays. Our common misconception number 6 is writing about a tragedy, right? When tragedy strikes, it is awful, right? We've all been through hard things in our life, overcome extreme hardships, some of us worse than others, right? And it's an admirable trait to show that you can persevere, to focus on your growth rather than suffering is going to be your key, though. So avoid writing about the worst experiences solely for pity, right? As admissions officers are much more interested in the challenges that shaped your identity and contributed to your personal development. So choose topics relevant to your applicant identity, such as experiences that influence your community engagement and self-awareness, and ensure that your narrative reflects resilience and growth rather than emphasizing suffering for its own sake. Sometimes we read essays and you think, wow, that was really sad, right? You don't want admissions officers to read your essay and be really sad, right? Again, if something happened to you that you want to write about that is really helped shape who you are today and it was a tragedy, your focus should be more on how it shaped your identity and how it contributed to your personal development, that growth, that who you are today. So for an example, writing about a severe childhood illness and how it shaped your awareness of isolation and influenced your community engagement as you developed could be strong, right? So instead of the whole focus being on, I had this terrible childhood illness, you would instead focus the essay on how this illness influenced your community engagement and spend more time talking about what you've done in your community because of this, right? And how it developed you and how it made you a strong person and how it helped you grow, right? What you learned from this and then how you used it. What did you use and how did you put it into action, right? So again, writing about a severe sports injury and how it taught you to bounce back is going to be much less effective, right? We talked about that sports injury essay. It is done way too often. Remember, colleges are not just writing samples, right? The essays aren't just writing samples. They're also opportunities for the applicants to highlight their values, their identities, their hobbies, their academic interests, professional goals, or any number of meaningful experiences. And sometimes the easiest way for a student to highlight these aspects about themselves is to focus on the idea of a growth journey. Again, as an editor, I read the essay and I think to myself, did this person, did this student show growth from beginning to end, right? And that's very important in a Common App essay. You want to highlight your growth journey, what you learned, reflection, right? Reflection is very important in this essay. Your personal statement is not the place to explore a newly traumatic or previously unresolved event, right? If you don't feel that you can approach a difficult past or difficult topic or event that happened to you with some closure or distance and proper healing, then it is not a good idea to talk about it in your Common App essay. This is not a therapy session, right? You're not writing this essay to relieve yourself of something, right? You're writing this essay to show your personal growth. Parents, teachers, peers, and professionals need to be aware that students might not feel comfortable writing about a tragic event in their lives as well. If you are trying to write your essay and you say, oh, I don't really want to write that about myself, or what are others going to think of me? If you are uncomfortable in any way about writing it, pick a different topic, right? This is a personal essay, so you should feel totally comfortable writing about your topic. And if you don't, pick something new. Again, the focus should be on your growth and how each event has shaped your identity to better prepare you for your next challenge, right? To show that perseverance. Common misconception number 7, bad educational experiences, right? We've all had a bad educational experience at some point in time. I know Miss Julie has, I have, I'm sure all of you have at one point in time. Your story is a redemptive self-narrative, a type of narrative that may resonate with others, right? If you're writing about your own experience. In a redemptive narrative, bad things can happen to good people, but you must still demonstrate that you could have improved your performance and that you understood your role in the situation, right? So perhaps you did not take your high school internship seriously and then learned a hard lesson about consequences. Or perhaps you were let go from your summer job because you did not ask for clarification on your duties. Although it is possible that your supervisor should have explained your duties more clearly, you also could have taken the initiative to ask. So what I'm saying here is, in these essays, if you write about a challenge of some sort, something that happened to you, you don't want to assign the blame. You don't say, well, I got this bad grade, or I got fired from my job because it was the boss's fault, or I got this bad grade because I had a horrible teacher, right? You don't want to write that in your Common App essay. You should demonstrate that you understand why you face the difficulty. Share the factors, share the experience, right? That were outside of your control. For instance, insufficient information or unclear objectives, but do not assign blame. In other words, don't say something like, my poor performance was actually Bob's fault because he didn't give me the reports on time, right? That's assigning blame, and admissions officers will pick up on that. Okay, well, he is blaming someone else for his mistake. Instead, say something, without the information in the reports, I could not complete my part of the project prior to the deadline. In retrospect, I wish I had not just waited for the information, but had tried asking my supervisor for help. Do you see the difference in those two? In one, the person is blaming someone. In the second one, they're explaining what happened without assigning any blame. So the most important element of your essay is the lesson that you learned that turns your failure into a valuable life experience. So if you're writing about a challenge of some sort, the majority of the essay is not about that challenge or that difficult thing that you had to overcome. The majority of the essay is going to be about the lesson you learned. What did I learn from this challenge? How did I overcome this challenge? And what am I doing about it now, right? What am I putting into action that I learned? This could involve learning to ask for help, right? Maybe you learned, okay, asking for help is important, and this is something I need to do from now on. Or maybe to embrace new experiences, right? Look at new perspectives, take different perspectives into consideration instead of turning them down right away. It could even be as simple as learning to keep a calendar with more important appointments noted. You should connect the lesson that you are discussing with the responsibility you already admitted. So for example, if you've described your unwillingness to take the initiative to locate essential information, then you may have learned the importance of having a proactive mindset, right? So again, the majority of these essays, the majority of the essay should be about how you overcame that obstacle, what you learned, reflection, right? And how you're using that in your life today. So instead of describing a scenario where that you've already put your hard-won wisdom to work, instead think of a story illustrating how you have changed your behavior for the better. So for example, you might refer to a situation where you received a homework assignment with ambiguous instructions, but detail how you remember your prior experience with unclear instructions, ask your teacher to clarify, and avert a disaster for yourself and the rest of the class, right? You turn it into a more positive story of what you did as well. So not just the challenge. Instead, the majority of the essay should be on how you overcame that challenge and the lessons you learned from that as well. And then what you're doing now to put them into action. Misconception number 8, listing accomplishments. Avoid a resume style essay. Too many times I read essays and I think to myself, this sounds like a list, or it looks like a list, right? They're listing, I am editor of a newspaper. You do not want to list in your essay, right? If your personal statement feels like a prose version of your activity list, you should start over, right? Your activity list is there for a reason. Do not write lists in your Common App essay as well. It's generally acceptable to mention your accomplishments in your Common App personal essay, and your personal essay is an opportunity for you to learn from your experiences, right? So when mentioning accomplishments, it's important to strike a balance. You should focus on how these accomplishments have shaped you as a person, what you've learned from them, and how they have influenced your personal growth and development, right? So again, I don't know if you've noticed the common pattern here, but in each one of these misconceptions, what do I go back to? Your essay should show how you have been shaped as a person, right? What you've learned from the story you're telling, and how your personal growth from beginning to end as well. So avoid listing your accomplishments without providing context or reflection. So you can weave your accomplishments into your essay, but it has to be part of the narrative. It has to be cohesive, right, as well, and not sound like a list. But yes, you can add accomplishments into your essay as well. Is it okay to show off a little? Yes, right? Go ahead, show off a little, but remember that stating too many accomplishments might look like a rewrite of your activity section, okay? So it's better to mention accomplishments only if they add to the narrative of your essay. And do they fit into the narrative of your essay is even more important, right? If your whole essay is a story about you overcoming a challenge, and you overcame a challenge in your mock trial, that fits into your essay, right? Here's another example of how I used what I learned in real life. But you don't want it should fit into the story. It should fit into your narrative as well. Remember to show instead of tell. Avoid presenting a mere list of facts and opt for storytelling approach, right? Blend in your creative writing with personal reflection, incorporating anecdotes, thoughts, memories. I even tell students dialogue is okay, right? You can even add a little bit of dialogue into your personal statement as well. But the goal is to make your experiences memorable, to stand out amidst a multitude of applications, right? And admissions officers appreciate the effort to make it an easy and enjoyable and insightful read. So remember, with storytelling in general, whether it's a narrative or any creative writing piece, you want to show rather than tell. We are almost there. Misconception number 9, be yourself. You want to paint a picture of you. The purpose of the college essay is to paint a complete picture of yourself. Show admissions committee the person behind the grades and the test scores. They're already going to get your test scores and your grades and your transcripts and your resume and your activities list. Show them something more, right? Tell your story. A strong college essay shows your unique experiences, your personality. My favorite essays are the ones where I read and I finish and I say, wow, I learned so much about this person and I never even met them, right? The admissions officers have not met you. Think about that when you are writing your story. What is it saying about you, your perspective, your interests, your values, and ultimately what makes you unique, right? The college essay also provides students with a considerable amount in their application, empowering them to share their own stories. I like this little picture, just be yourself. That's a very good thing to remember, and something that maybe you've heard the whole way back since kindergarten, right? But don't exaggerate or lie in your Common App essay. Many times I will read something and I'm like, that doesn't quite sound right, right? If I'm thinking that, then an admissions officer is definitely thinking that, right? We had a student write about a hospital internship at a couple years ago, and he said that in the internship, he kind of gave his responsibilities of like filling supplies or whatever, but then all of a sudden he was taking care of patients more so than even a nurse would. And again, in an internship, he was a student, he wasn't a nurse, he was just a volunteer. It didn't fit. Something didn't quite seem right. And if an editor is thinking that, then an admissions officer would definitely think that. You don't want to exaggerate. You don't want to lie in your Common App essay or tell a story that isn't true. If you do that, it does come through, right? So be honest. Write in your own voice. To bring authenticity to your essay, you'll need to write in your own voice. You should feel free to use contractions, incorporate dialogue, employ vocabulary that comes naturally to you. Don't lie or hyperbolize, right? The essay is authentically about you. More than likely, it will be obvious that you're exaggerating. And it has happened many times where we have questioned, okay, well, did this really happen? And sometimes, yes, sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes no. But again, you don't want the admissions officer to think that you're exaggerating or lying about something. The last misconception, after this, we will go through some examples and look at some of these essays, including a sports essay, but one that works, right? But being too heavy or verbose is our misconception number 10. Throw out the thesaurus. The thesaurus is always such a difficult word to say, but throw it out, right? This is a direct quote from Tufts University admissions blog. Here's the thing. When it comes to college essays, we are trying to hear your voice. Sure, it can be a voice amplified by self-reflection. In essays that you've worked hard to write, you might come out sounding funnier or more curious or just plain cooler than you do in a typical conversation with your friends. but the cadence of your words and the perspective you bring to the page should genuinely be you, should be genuinely you, right? Um, when you're trying to communicate with something important about who you are as with the reader, you want to sound natural. So if as an editor, if I read through the essay and there are some really big words, it makes it difficult to read, right? Yes, it's okay to have some interesting words, but if your whole essay has very difficult language, that makes it difficult to read, right? And you don't want an admissions officer to say, oh, what does this word mean when they're reading your essay, right? So natural is going to be your best bet, and it's your doorway to our understanding of who you are as well. That doesn't mean your writing can't make use of literary techniques, right? Or read lyrically or show off a good grasp of vocabulary. It also doesn't mean that specific words are off limits. It just means don't overwrite, right? Don't use too many big words. Don't use words that someone typically in your life would not understand, right? Even have your mother or your father or your brother read your essay. And if they say, what is this word? What is that word, right? That means too difficult. This is also from Tufts Admissions. It said, don't just let formality, overwriting, or obsessively polishing your essays squeeze them completely dry of your voice, your playfulness, and your identity. Get rid of your thesaurus and let us really get to know you, right? They want to know the real you. And it's hard to do that if you put in too many verbose, too many big words into your essay. A few other common misconceptions before we get to examples. Focusing too much on the past. Sometimes I read an essay and I think it starts with the student being 4 years old, 5 years old, and halfway through the essay, the student's only 10, right? That is something else you don't want to do. You don't want to focus too much on the past. While drawing from the past can be valuable,